Thank you all for coming. I know it's the very end of LSI and you guys have the most stamina because you're still coming to a 4:30 course. So I am Tiffany Rosenhan. I'm married to Branden Rosenhan, who runs MedMountain Ventures. I am here to talk about storytelling, something I'm super passionate about. And I've learned watching Branden. We been married for 20 years. So I've seen the whole journey from medical school through bioengineering, through medical devices and startups, that storytelling is actually pretty relevant. It's how you get people to believe in you and invest in you. It's not a sales strategy. It's not a marketing pitch. It's your story. And I think when you can share your story effectively, you recruit the right people. It's not that raising money is difficult. It is, or it's not difficult. It is difficult, but it's even more difficult to raise money from investors who believe in you and will carry you through the entire time of the product's lifespan. So I'm going to talk to you today about something I'm excited about. In our marriage, Branden had a stroke 6 years ago. So sometimes we call it, he's playing the stroke card, which means he gets a little tired and doesn't want to talk as much. So he's leaving it to me to do most of the talking because he's pulling the stroke card. So
yes.
We'll
Yeah. At the end of the day, I was just in another panel and Tiffany said, how'd it go? And I said, not great for me. I remembered Caitlin's name, but I forgot Jordy's name, or I spelled it wrong. And
it's just a good excuse because before the stroke, he couldn't remember anyone's name. After the stroke, he still can't remember people's names, but now he has a really good excuse.
Right.
That's right. It's his story. So, okay. So this is a really fun topic. So before you go into a meeting with an early stage investor, I like to think about the preparatory phase. There are some assumptions we can make as a owner of a small business that you want to get investment. Number one, the investor is going to assume that your science is sound. They are going to eventually do their due diligence that your science is real and it's based in fact, in data and raw core science. So there's an assumption that your science is good. There's going to be an assumption that your IP is good and that you have strong IP. Those are the first two assumptions. The third assumption is this expectation of altruism. In healthcare, it's real that people change lives. You improve lives for the better. So there's this there's an assumption that your product is going to improve people's lives. So those are three assumptions. Your science is good, your IP is good, and you do want to improve patient care in people's lives. So go into any meeting with an investor having that shared assumption. Therefore, you don't have to spend your time talking about all the raw science until they actually want to get into that point. I would also say, so first, the three assumptions, science, IP, and altruism. Unless you're in a competition or a government-sponsored program with a hard deadline, do not expect to walk away from your first or second or even third meeting with an investor with a verbal commitment or a check. Your expectation should shift. Instead, when you first meet with investors, focus not on stepping away with money, but on building a relationship. That's the primary goal of reaching out to early stage investors. One of Branden's favorite tips that I don't know if you thought of yourself or someone else said to you, but when you meet early stage investors, don't ask for money, ask for advice. Because go ahead.
And that's still me practically. It took me a number of years in the startup world to understand what venture capitalists do. And now most of you already know you're sophisticated, but venture capitalists, we also are raising money and we're doing so all the time. And so therefore, it is that you ask for money and they'll get advice. And, it's not always true, but generally you also go and ask advice and get money. And especially depending on when you're investing, you tell the right story about the right time of your interaction with the investors. And so that's
so are you going to go ahead.
Can I interject something? So I think maybe you're going to talk about this because Tiffany's driving this, but a little bit about getting your agent and how oh, she'll get there. See, this is go.
Clearly I've read the notes. No, I was going to say, you're going to see a lot of storytelling comparables. So oftentimes I am a traditionally published author, which means I have a literary agent and a traditional publisher, and I have to go that route. When I speak to authors and writers that want to go that route and get an agent and get a publisher, they say, how do I know my manuscript's ready? And I have one hard and fast rule that is as tedious as it sounds, which is until you can read your manuscript, means your book, cover to cover, aloud, without stopping, it is not ready. If you have to stop to make changes, if you have to stop to change words, alter character, increase a plot structure, it's not ready. So I think there's a different evaluation metric in biomedicine, and I don't know what it is for every product, but identify what it is you need to do to determine whether your product and business is ready. And then go through that tedious, laborious process of the equivalent of reading your book aloud, all 90,000 words. So make sure your project is ready to go. The reason I say that is I have seen in my profession over and over authors and writers being given incredible opportunities, and the book kind of fizzles because the truth was it wasn't ready. It wasn't there. And you do not want to lose an opportunity to capitalize on a great investor if you are preemptively pursuing early stage investors. Make sure that you are ready to go before you reach out to early stage investors, which is the follow-up point of ask for advice. So some ideas, some things you can ask for. Are there specific data metrics you value over others? When you're talking to early stage investors, ask them, what do you actually consider when investing in companies? Where should my company be before I take capital? In your experience, what companies have you seen succeed, and at which point did they take capital? Were they overly ambitious? Were they underly? That's not a word. Were they not ambitious enough? If you are new to leading a medtech company, I would recommend you ask for mentorship. MedTech is kind of unique in this space because a lot of the CEOs are science trained. They're not coming from having an MBA, or they're not coming from going to Wharton Business School. They have a Stanford degree in biophysics or a PhD in nuclear, I don't even know, all sorts of things. The point is they're not typically skilled in leading a company. They don't necessarily have those skills. That doesn't mean they can't learn them. It means they need mentorship. So if you are at the point where you're asking for early stage investors, I would also prioritizing asking for early stage mentors. Ideally, these might be people who will also invest in you.
Yeah, and you made me think about when we see, so we're seed, we're very early, we are very much hands-on, and every VC says that they love their investors and they're going to help them. We actually do that, and we generally get very involved with them. And so when you get involved, one of the first things I see, tying into what she said, is we see these slides that say I have like this advisor, and I have Dr. So-and-so and PhD so-and-so, and they start rattling off these names. And I sort of say, all right, who do you work with the most? Who comes and has the most meetings with you? As you're building and you're raising capital, which of these advisors are true advisors for you? And then I always ask them, just like you said, you should get true mentorship. And then I say, if they really believe in you, how much money have they put in? Have they given you an angel investing check? Have they been willing to follow you? So it ties right into, the thing we talked about before, ask for money, get advice. But when you ask for advice, you really do want advice, and you really want people that will mentor you. In my startup company, I was very fortunate to have a mentor who is a medical device guru in Utah. And so Sean came, and I think initially this guy's kind of laughing at us. I'm a doctor. My partner's an attorney. We don't know what we're doing. We really don't. We're not, entrepreneur experts. I'm a doctor. And so Sean was really kind to us. And, we asked him to do more, and he did. And he was a fantastic advisor. And we've stayed in touch now for 15 years. We've done other deals together. And so you really do need those mentors and as advisors, and not just the ones that you put on a slide deck, that you talked to Dr. So-and-so once, or so-and-so used to be the VP of Blue Cross Blue Shield in North Carolina. Like, you want someone who really believes in you, and you have that strong relationship, and you develop, as Tiffany said, that long-standing relationship.
Yeah, I would agree. And because the competition's intense in raising money for biotech companies or Medicare healthcare companies, and we have those assumptions that your science is good, your IP is good, those are good. More important than having all of that, or as important as having an excellent product, is revealing your ability to lead. An investor is really investing in you. Investors want to invest in adaptable, resilient, thoughtful, capable leaders. So your sales and marketing strategy, all the good your product can do in the world, is only as relevant as your ability to lead it forward and weather the storms of entrepreneurship. Ultimately, despite the altruistic, component we all have in our businesses, it's investors want a return on their investment. So you have to prove in a short period of time that you are capable of weathering those storms. So they will perform due diligence on your product, its efficacy, where it fits in the market. But being an entrepreneur requires fortitude and adaptability. So I want to pivot into how do you pitch yourself? Tell a story, your story. First, what is this product? I kind of think we have a small room here. If we're okay with, I kind of thought this would be a little more interactive. I want to give everyone, if you're interested, the opportunity to pitch your product in one sentence. And then I'm going to kind of follow that up with what I think we can do after that. Does anyone want to take a go at it? What's your product or your brand? Caitlin.
Oh, wait, she needs a microphone.
Oh.
Do you want the product in one sentence?
Yeah. If I say, hey, what do you do? What's your product? How would you answer that?
So we automate nursing workflows to manage brain pressure through CSF drainage.
Okay, great. It's a pretty technical answer. I like it. Go for it.
Yeah. Better bladder cancer care.
Say it again.
Better bladder cancer care.
Oh, okay, great.
Right. We're building the first microstent for angle closure glaucoma.
Fantastic. Anyone else?
Oh, she's right here.
Hi, I'm Rachel. We have a solution for patients with asthma to take their medication more effectively and consistently.
Fantastic. Okay, you guys are like ahead of the curve.
Wait, someone else in the back, right?
Is someone else?
No? Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
You guys are so much better behaved than students that like jump out of their chairs to answer questions. Okay, those are all fantastic. You each gave a very scientific answer. I would like to think of what each of you has said as one clause in a conjunctive sentence. So you have your clause, which is the science, and then add to it a compound clause that explains where and how it fits in the market. And I think you develop that singular sentence that's not only your actual product, but how it fits into the market and why it matters. All of that can be done in a really cohesive sentence. So let me give an example. This is, I think, the example Branden was talking about. So before I became an author, you have to pitch your book. So people would say, what's your book about? And I'd meet these agents and they'd ask me these questions and they would say, tell me about your book. And I would start with saying, well, it's about this girl that's lived all over the world and she moves to America after spending her entire life abroad as the daughter of U.S. diplomats. And, you know, these bad guys are after her and there's a love story. And they're kind of just like, okay, no hits. And then I reframed what I said. And people would say, what's your book about? And I said, well, it's like a James Bond movie with a teenage female protagonist. Suddenly, I got published. The story didn't change at all. All that changed was my ability to communicate the experience the reader would have when they picked up the book. All you have time to do in that first introduction to an investor is to introduce the concept of what you have and how it fits what they will experience working with you. That's really important because statistically, we have about 15 to 20 seconds to capture someone's attention. So yes, your science is super sound, but it's only as relevant as the context of the sentence it fits within. So we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit.
And let me interject something for the entrepreneurs. And some of you I've met at this conference and super impressed. I actually have loved this conference. I mean, a lot of talented entrepreneurs. But the thing I also had some entrepreneurs that wanted to meet with me. And I said, great. And most of them I screened personally, but they didn't screen me. And they came and said, I'm raising $30 million on my Series B or my Series C. And I said, but it's on my bio that we're seed investors. Okay. So we will come early and we will invest. But so when you do your messaging, take your time to prepare because as Caitlin did on our panel and I was with Rachel, we met yesterday, you're going to meet with tons and tons of VCs, tons of angel groups. I mean, a lot. And you have to, you got to understand how you interact with that VC. You got to do diligence before them. So people say, well, you want to know which VC invests in you. But honestly, as entrepreneurs, like you actually want to get the money and the commitment first, and then you can do diligence. But you also do diligence, you prepare, just like you prepare your message and you keep it succinct. You understand what they're looking for. You may call other people, you can look on their webpage, hey, so-and-so invested in this company. You may be able to call that CEO or that founder and say, hey, I'm having a meeting with fund so-and-so, we're going to meet with Samitra at MedMountain Ventures. What do you know about them? Like, you guys are investors. What did you think about them? How do we, win their support, and how do we receive, how do we get them to invest in us? So that may have been a long way of
No, that's actually a really good point. I think, so as an investor, do you like when people know absolutely everything there's to know about you online?
Well, it depends what you mean, everything.
Everything about your MedMountain Ventures.
About the fund, we really do. And I mean, we have our mission on our webpage. You can look at LinkedIn and all of our partners. And so it's not that whether I care or not, it allows you to engage that relationship. And so maybe, I don't know, how did you meet with your agent Webb, and like, how did you leverage that pitch? So I'll turn the question back to you.
That's less relevant.
But I think it does tie in, right? Because for me, it's no.
Well, like I was going to say, when you're dating, right, you kind of don't want to be like, oh, I know that you went to that trip last week. It's kind of the opposite in venture, right? You kind of, if you're following them on Instagram, you want to say, so think of a movie pitch, right? So I used my pitch. Think of a movie pitch. If you can talk about your product in a context that the investor will immediately understand. So what are the benchmarks? What are the other products similar that they'll be familiar with that you can use to benchmark where your product fits? Like bladder care, right? Is that what you, so bladder care, I don't know how much you know about bladder care, but if he said this product will XYZ based on a company that he knows you're aware of, how it is comparable in the market-driven strategy to a company you've worked with, that immediately gives you context off the bat. So fit your pitch to the existing market and use existing businesses that, assuming your investor will be familiar with, or ideally ones that they're familiar with, to shape the place that your work fits in the market. Because like we said, the due diligence will come. He'll learn everything there's to know about bladder care, am I saying it right? Once he does all the due diligence, all the science. But why does that matter? How big is the market? What company are you basing your take to market strategy off of?
And now I'll head on what I'm doing is so I'm also raising capital, and because we have 20 portfolio companies now, we also help them raise capital. So I actually had meetings today where for our portfolio company, we're pitching a larger venture fund, right? So I'm helping our investors get their next round of capital. And so a perfect example is we have this EEG monitor, right? So some of you have seen a headband that's an EEG monitor. Ours is much easier. So Epitel, you wear, 4 patches, and they have electrodes, and they study your brain. They look to see if you have look to see if you have seizures. And so people say, well, that's kind of new. It has come out in the last number of years. So how do you help them understand that what a monitor is important for, and how much, and how's it going to make revenue? How's it going to have people buy products? And so people say, you ever known what a Holter monitor is? Your grandpa had a question of a heart attack, or, has an abnormality. And so they're going to attach the wires, and they're going to wear this belt, and it's called a Holter monitor. And they're going to go wear this for 2 or 3 days. It's awkward. So what happened next to that? Well, there was something called iRhythm. iRhythm looked like a cell phone. You attached it to your a single patch. You attached it to your chest. You walked around, it fell off, and you mailed it back in. And you said, so Epitel, our EEG monitoring system, is exactly like iRhythm. As a matter of fact, it's so much like iRhythm that one of their sales lead at iRhythm is now a board member for us. And so you need to figure out how to connect your message in a way that your investor, whether it's angel or venture capitalist, can relate, how they can connect those dots.
Yeah. I think it's no different than fiction. So in fiction pitching, people say, oh, this is a book. It's like never been done before. It's always been done before. Use the existing market to tell your story. I kind of want to jump ahead for a minute. So when you're talking about pitching your story, give people a complex sentence of your product, what it is, where it fits in the market, and benchmark it to other comparables. You want to pitch them the concept of what they can expect when they dive in deeper into this conversation with you by piquing their interest and kind of securing their attention for the next X minutes. First, kind of then you can dive into the following. What's the product's origin story? What is your connection to this product? Clarify that up front. I would suggest only making it personal if it's objectively personal. If you're dealing with diabetes care, do you have diabetes? Otherwise, it's just assumed you find it interesting. Maybe there's a peripheral connection, but only dive into that personal component if it's actually relevant. I would clarify the team up front. Who are you and attached to this business? Are you the inventor, co-founder? Are you just raising the money? Most importantly, and you could disagree with me, are you the key decision maker? And if not, who is? And how long have you been on this product? I would say, do you have relevant experience taking product to market? And what is your particular expertise in relationship to this product? Of course, include upfront any relevant red tape or complex issues that are kind of on the periphery. You don't want your investor to be surprised in a month if they find out that you actually don't have, the ability to make decisions.
So yeah, and I'll interject on the understanding. Do you have the interaction with the decision maker, right? So that's, as you go higher in your journey, which all of you are going to raise Series A and you're going to grow and when you go to those higher level venture firms, you need to understand who you're meeting with as well. So there may be associates, there may be analysts, there may be principals. And so that's okay. You're going to have to screen your way through them generally. But you also need to understand who makes the decision maker. Who is the decision maker? Like which of the senior partners, the general partner at the firm, is really in this domain that you are in. That they want to know the renal and urology space. And so they have 4 partners. One does neuro, one does orthopedics, and the other venture partner is the one who does everything, female and GI related and so those are the ones you want to know. How do I get to that person? Okay. How do I get to that key decision maker? Even though you still have to go through the pathway of their analyst or their, younger partner.
No, that's great. Because I had said earlier, those assumptions that your science is good, we're not focused too much on the type of science you include in your slide deck. Again, this is more about shaping your verbal relationship and I want to pause and kind of just give some background on the medical device companies that he's invented or built or whatever.
Or whatever.
Invented, done all the things. I would say at key points when we needed an infusion of capital, those investors came not spontaneously or surprisingly. They came because they had at that point had a relationship with Branden, or I should say Branden had a relationship with for a decade plus. And so these investors, they start to care less about just the super technicality of the product and more about your ability to take a product forward. So keep that in mind, that those relationships are not they're always valuable, but they're not necessarily valuable only in those first few months. They can be valuable 10, 20 years right now down the road. Good investors should be with you for the lifespan of your product and of your own career as a medtech inventor, creator, entrepreneur. So I would say those relationships matter from the get-go. And that's why I can take a step back from the science and the pitch deck and say, what are you actually trying to accomplish when you meet with investors? You're trying to build rapport. And this actually was my next point, which is I'm going to kind of get into some practical tips that I've just learned over the years. Help. So first, this again, storytelling. What is your character? So I like to think if a writer asks, how do I build character? How do I create interesting characters? My go-to phrase is this: you can reveal more about a character in a single difficult decision they make than you can through 100 pages of description. So you can describe your character infinite ways, but until you put your character in positions where they're forced to make difficult choices, you don't have a strong understanding of who that character is. So when you're telling your story to investors, I would consider highlighting key points that you've been forced to make difficult decisions regarding your business. You don't have to share that you made the right decision. It's also okay to share that you made the wrong decision and how you recovered and took it forward. Do not be afraid of showcasing your vulnerabilities as an entrepreneur, because we all know you have them and we all have them. Therefore, pretending they don't exist doesn't do you any favors. I would disclose decisions you make that haven't worked, and showing that you've been able to adapt and proceed forward after a unfortunate incident reveals your character and your ability to lead. So share the difficult decisions you've been forced to make early on. Talk about how you lead your company. Be willing to share failure and how you adapted afterward. Investors are not and you could correct me, but they're not looking for leaders who dig their heels in and assume they're right. We are all going to get it wrong. The space is changing rapidly. The go-to-market strategies change rapidly. The market changes rapidly. So show your resilience and commitment through specific experiences. So choose maybe 1 to 2 to 3 experiences to have on your speed dial to share with investors when they say, what have you done right? And you could say, well, this decision was really hard for me. I chose to this way and it paid off. Or we weren't sure what to do and I don't think we had great advice and we made this decision. It didn't work. So we recovered this way. Be vulnerable and honest about your experience.
Yeah.
And also, go ahead.
It's the same thing with us. So going back to my, so I'm going to tie this into a few things. Number one is that long-standing story for you, and think of the journey for your company. You may be, so it may take a long time to raise the capital you want. You're going to have hiccups. Nobody goes up and to the right. There is no, there is no silver bullet. The thing you want to think about is, again, how do you communicate clearly where you have messed up, but also how those relationships can take you through that. And that wasn't articulated well, but to give an example, with my first startup, Pemblade, I thought, this is the greatest thing in the world. Everyone's going to buy it. It's amazing. And of course, every entrepreneur thinks that, and you want them to think that. And then we started to have our first commercialization, and we said, oh, wait, like we thought the surgeons would buy this scalpel as a new scalpel, as something they would love, but they haven't changed the way they've used the scalpel for 200 years. So, okay, well, then maybe the surgeons aren't the right customer. So we went our first 6 months going after customer and the surgeons. We said, well, wait a minute, what about wound care doctors? So you have to be able to be adaptive, listen to your advisors. And then who acquired our company? We were at our first conference, 2015, and someone came by our booth. By the way, show and tell is a big thing, right? Just like you show them the transcript or the what's the word you use? Manuscript. Thank you. You show them the manuscript. It's the same thing. I'm a big believer of show and tell, right? If you bring a device and you're trying to pitch me as an investor, as a venture capitalist. So we had someone run by the booth, and guess what? 6 years, we stayed in touch. He said, oh, love this. We just sold a company similar in this space. It's in a kit. Let's circle back in 6 years later. Yeah, 2019, so maybe it's 2014, maybe it's 5-6 years later, they purchased us. And so that relationship from 5 years that was nourished is end up who acquired it. And it will be the similar thing for you. If you're going to be 5-6 years from now raising your Series B, or you're going to need a bridge round, those people who believe in you and believe in your story, you're humble about that. When you make mistakes, Well,
to emphasize what you're saying about, I won't call them necessarily mistakes, but the experience of Pemblade, the same investors that invested in Pemblade early on and were there for the journey of not getting it right out of the gate with surgeons, et cetera, are still investing in his companies, which means it's not a turnoff to make an error. It's showcasing your ability to lead and pivot. That's more important, I would say, in the long run. Okay, so with your character, talking about your decision-making process, I would also add two kind of points. I think you've seen this as more than often than not. Maybe it's where we are, but I would be really careful, assuming you've had several partners and worked with other people, be very careful how you talk about former investors, former partners, former colleagues. Basically only talk positively. If there's something that's relevant legally or ethically or whatever, you can disclose that, but I would simplify any type of previous negative interaction to we parted ways. Do not talk bad about other investors. It's kind of like general rule of thumb. Surprising how often it happens, I think. People like to share what wasn't good, but just be very careful how you talk about other people that you've worked with on your business.
And particularly venture capitalists, right? Because we know each other. I mean, there were a bunch of us that are family offices, venture capitalists at a dinner, 2 nights ago. And guess what? We will see a lot of the same deals together. And last LSI, and I was at one of these, they do a breakfast together. They want entrepreneurs sitting by venture capitalists. And one of them pitched his company. And I sort of said, this is cool. We're here for an interaction. Like, do you want any suggestions? And all he did for like the next 5 minutes was say, I don't understand how no one wants to invest in this, how no one believes this. And he was basically bashing all of the, and I'm like, so yeah, not the right approach. And so, yes.
It's one of those silly things that we just need a good reminder, because you can get really burned in this industry, and that's okay. And it's not wrong, but just be careful when you're talking to investors that you keep certain things private. And then the other second point is when you're pitching your story and we're talking about sharing your decision-making process, this is my third and final creative writing analogy. So with creative writing, with fiction, I always say that the magic with creative writing happens at this convergence point between who you are and what your unique experiences have been and your unique skill set and what you are uniquely interested and curious about. This convergent point is where the magic happens with fiction. I actually think it's pretty similar in medtech. I think the magic with your business happens at this convergence point between what your unique experience is and skill set and what you are uniquely interested and passionate about. You each have that if you're running a medtech company. I'm convinced of it. But you need to share and disclose and what that is and why you are the right person to lead this type of company, this type of product to the potential investor. Because ultimately it circles back to what we said in the beginning. You're asking them to invest in you. Yes, it's a tool. Yes, it's a device. Yes, it can, cure and do all these things. However, ultimately an investor is investing in your ability to take this company forward. Because again, investors do want a return on their investment. And a return on their investment can't happen if an individual gets flustered at the first sign of, backlash, or they get a bad review, or some type of legislation comes out that limits it. You can always adapt. So show your ability to adapt, and then show how you are the right and pretty much the only person that should be taking this type of product to market at this time. I think that's really important to kind of share that.
Yeah, with us, so because we're very early, I would say 50%, and people argue, well, you invest in people, you invest in products, and you invest in markets, right? So, does all of those three come together? We say, okay, the market, once we see it's big and it's sort of generally big, there's a lot of challenges, not just in med tech, but really we're betting on people. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, there are tons of great products. There's a graveyard of amazing new medical devices, great gadgets, and they never made it to market and they never were successful. And so really it is the people. We're early. We have 2 companies right now that are already on like their third pivot, but we bet on those investors. We bet on those entrepreneurs. We love them. We believe in them. And they've continued to follow advice. So it even goes back to your advice with angel groups and other people that are advisors. Really, really understand how you can leverage that.
No, that's great. My last point, and I want to open up to questions, make sure we have time. I would say to the slide deck, I know we said not to talk about too much about it, but whether it's in the slide deck or you're just verbally communicating, I would be really careful to limit your hyperbole. Do not over-exaggerate. I would refrain from saying things like, this will change the world. This will impact every single person with cancer. For example, if you say, this will change the life of every teen girl in America, my first reaction is, how? Different socioeconomic positions, different access points. How does that really happen? It's impossible, seemingly, to do it a variety of, variables. So instead, I would recommend choosing the smallest, most accurate number you can. So for example, this has been proven to improve the lives of 18% of all teen girls in Utah. Suddenly that sounds like a far more realistic statistic. Then this will improve the lives of every teen girl. So focus on reducing your percentages to something that's attainable. It sounds like a real number and it sounds like a benchmark you can meet and then expand upon. So if you start out of the gate saying this is going to every single person with diabetes, every single person with, renal failure, all these people, that's true and we can get there, but I would limit that dialogue to more specific percentages that you can attain and then prove. So for example, back to that early meeting with early stage investors and you're saying, hey, what are you looking for from me? If you give this huge number, we're going to change this, every female, in America will have this access, and you don't do that, have you failed? Well, not necessarily, but you failed according to your own metric. So reduce that number. So you say, we're trying to access 15% of all people in blah, blah, blah. Do that. And then you meet with your investors 6 months later, who's now become your mentor. And you say, actually, we did this and we've been able to reach not only 15, we reached 16% of all these people. Suddenly you seem like a winner. So be really careful with your hyperbole, really careful with your statements. If you've noticed in the presentations the other day, I feel like a lot of them said, our market cap is several $billion. That's true. We can get there, but it doesn't start that way. And I would limit that language as much as possible because your statistics are still good. They're still strong and valuable, but give real points that you can actually showcase improvement on. If you start out saying it's everything, then you have nowhere to go. Start smaller and improve. Do you have a comment on that?
And, well, I love that you all know what, total addressable market. Everyone has the same, three circles you have and how big the market is. The way we would say it is, I said, what is your beachfront? Okay, so even if you're going to a small market, like she said, her way of saying how focused is it? How are you going to get that in? How are you going to get that? We talked last night with one of these entrepreneurs, and we chatted, and I said, okay, you have all these amazing things. My idea, we may be disagreeing. This is great. That's what entrepreneurs and venture capitalists do. One in a row. I always say something one in a row. Get your first product in, get your first customer, and then you can grow based off that. And I actually got that advice from one of my venture capitalist mentors when I started my first startup. He said, and I said, I have this other idea and I'm going to license this technology from another. And he said, one in a row, Branden, one in a row. And so,
everyone that's ever mentored Branden is constantly trying to just slow him down.
Yeah.
And I think it's generally good advice. It is one step at a time. How do you move forward? One step, one day, one benchmark. I would say be excited, but practical. Scientists should be excited about your product. It should be the most exciting thing you want to talk about, but be practical about, again, where it goes, how it fits in the market. And my last really piece of advice is to practice your proposal. Practice how you speak. I know it sounds goofy, but I promise if you stand in front of your mirror and start sharing your product with yourself in the mirror, I would recommend actually writing out your sentences, your complex compound sentences that share as much as possible in as short of information. Practice saying that. So that way, and an investor says, tell me about yourself. You've got this super fluid sentence that tells them everything they're going to need to know in about 15 seconds. And you don't stumble over your words and you don't get sidetracked into like the weeds of the science and the mechanics of your device. If they're another scientist and they've asked for the science, I would do that. But up front, investors want to know that you're capable, you're excited about your product. Again, it goes back to the assumption is it's a real product, right? The assumption is very soon they're going to realize this is or isn't real. So therefore, show your excitement, limit your exaggerated like, oh, it's going to change the entire world. It could, but it's less likely. So focus on a limited viewpoint of what your product can do and be really comfortable and confident sharing those, I would call them complex sentences that tell as much as possible in a shortest period of time. That shows your own competence and it makes you less reactive to someone's response. So you can feel confident in your messaging that you've already thought through how you share this and give them as much information as you can right off the gate.
Yeah, and I'm going to tie in one quick thing. I know we're running out of time. We're here to chat with you afterwards if there's questions. I know there's a lot of awesome entrepreneurs. So Tiffany, how many pages did you sort of write for before your first book was published to get to 380 pages?
I don't talk about such things.
She's humble. Thousands, right? So I think what she's saying is right. You practice. I love the idea of looking in a mirror. You practice your presentation because then when you need a ton of content and you need to
you're all smart. You guys can have like flashcards in your brain. Have like 3 flashcards in your brain. And this flashcard is for an investor that I really, really want. This flashcard is for a guy that I don't really care if he invests, but I want him as a mentor. This flashcard is for like this person. I don't know how much money they have, but they seem to be just giving money away. Let's just try it. Like have 3 different flashcards in your brain that you can pull from and say, okay, this is my sentence for this. This is my pitch to this person. This is my pitch to this person. And then you're adaptable and you're capable of starting that conversation with anyone that is interested in your product.
Yes.
You never know who they're going to introduce.
Yeah. And some of you have done great. I've already seen the decks. So you have different versions of your decks. You've all done this. And then if you're going to go sit down with someone, you should be able to this is my story. All right, for us. MedMountain Ventures is a pre-seed, seed healthcare generalist fund that has no competition in Utah. And we have 4 incredible partners, 3 of which are physicians.
Notice how he said in Utah. It's not that there's no competition. There's no competition in Utah, which is still significant. But it's not saying this whole thing, oh my gosh, we're the only ones ever. No, but we're the only ones in our huge regional market. And that's still very relevant. Yeah. So I want to open up to questions. Or do you have anything to say?
No, that's
do we have questions? I don't really know.
We have 1 minute. Who has the most poignant?
1 minute or
no, I'd love
something's going to happen.
I just want to to know, what is the biggest blunder, red flag, or obvious thing that people leave out when they're approaching you?
Ooh, a great question.
So, the negative part of me saying there's so many. I would say not being honest. I would just say, like, look, be humble and be honest. I've been there, right? I still struggle raising capital from my future LPs. It still takes me. As a matter of fact, I've already had meetings with some of the people this conference that I want as investors in our fund in 5 years. You have to build that. You got to be humble, honest, and patient. And
I would definitely say honesty. The transparency will reveal, all shall be revealed during the due diligence process. So don't hide anything. If you've made mistakes, own them. If there's complicated former partners that are trying to swindle you, whatever it could be, just be transparent and don't. This is our rule from our oldest daughters. My rule was, if I ever hear something from someone else that I should have heard from you, you will be in trouble. That was the rule. It is the rule. Yeah. I think it's the same with investors. If they hear something from a third source that they should have heard from you, you have kind of lost trust. So be transparent. Don't be afraid of sharing real information, even if you feel like it makes you look bad. Like if you make a mistake or you did something wrong, disclose it. I would say lack of honesty has been the biggest turnoff with potential.
Great question. I think we're out of time.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks so much.